Right. All right. Welcome, guys, to the Guerra Brothers podcast here on the King Guerra channel. I'm here with my brother Samuel, my older brother Samuel. Today we're going to talk about key things every man should know and characteristics he should develop. I myself have been doing some study on it. My brother Samuel has been doing more in-depth study about it. Naturally, it's something that intrigues us because we're men trying to be men in the world the right way, the way God designed it. And right now, not that I believe, there is an attack on men. So my goal, and I'm sure my brother's goal, is to help other men become good men and have the tools they need that aren't being provided.
So when you say you've been studying, what do you mean by that?
What have I been studying?
Yeah.
Well, one, self-reflection. Two, mostly like YouTube videos, seeing how men who are successful carry themselves and what characteristics they have to help them achieve success. And also the Bible, how the men carried themselves then. Because in the Bible it says men have leadership roles, and naturally I feel I have in myself, I feel I'm a leader. So I feel it, what the Bible says is evident inside me. And to me, it's right that every man should be a leader in some sort, whether a leader in their own personal life, in their family, or wherever position they're in. And right now, it's an anti-cultural thing to call a male a leader.
Yeah, definitely.
So, we're not gonna go too in detail in this video, but what would you say are key elements that every man should be working on in order to get closer to, it's a never-ending improvement, right? But basically, what every man should be working on in order to be a well-rounded man. Basically, skills and characteristics men should have.
So are you talking just any age in general, or are we talking like younger men? What are we talking?
I would say every age. Basically, things that every man should be working on to help them further develop them as men.
Well,
Essential things that men need to know in order to effectively be a man.
well, I think if I had to think just right off the top of my head about what's probably one of the most important characteristics is a man that has his principles and his values well developed and well formulated, his thoughts and opinions on said principles and values. And not only that, but to have the courage to carry out those beliefs and those values. Because I feel like everybody nowadays, everything is like PC, like political correctness. So nobody's really allowed to have any values nobody's allowed to draw the line, because if you do, then they give you all kinds of names, they call you like a racist or a misogynist or a homophobe or
Bigot.
A bigot. Yeah. Like you're not allowed to have thoughts and opinions that were traditionally, common thoughts and values amongst not only just men, but just society in general. And now you have those certain beliefs, you're just immediately categorized into one of these groups, And then once you have that label on you, like the intellectual conversation ends, and it just goes to, you're just automatically discounted out of having an opinion or any thoughts on the matter, because they place one of these labels on you.
I know this is kind of you can't really answer this question in one go, but as brief as you can, what kind of effect do you think the attack on men has had on society itself? Like, what are the repercussions for men not being how men are supposed to be?
It's a complete destruction of society. In my opinion, the male is the backbone, or the backbone of society. is the one that, like everybody else, kind of everything else is kind of formed around what a strong man does. Like if you just look at any, like, I don't know, a lion tribe, or I don't know too much about animals, but everything kind of revolves around, they're the ones kind of handling business, you know? And now it's so common to have like a single mother household, and it's like this topic gets so touchy because automatically when you start saying what are the effects of children in a single mother household, a lot of people just take it as in you're attacking the woman, right? And that's where the misogynist, or you have certain opinions, that's where all that comes in. But it's just so common to have a single mother households now, and because of that, like the kids growing up, they don't get to see, because I believe that there's a balance, and I believe that's the reason God and nature created, I believe in the family unit. I believe that it's essential for human well-being, physical and emotional health. And due to the father being out of the household, and you could go on for hours about theories
The
about
effects and everything.
but not only that, but like what's the origin of where it all started, of when they started kicking the men out of the house, right? So I believe when the man is not in the house, you don't have that balance. And I'm specifically talking about like emotional regulation. You know, I just believe men and women react differently to situations, and I believe that a child needs to see both of those sides, how the masculine and how the feminine reacts to certain things. And I believe they're not getting that. You know, and then another huge thing is like discipline. I think discipline is just, obviously some of these are generalizations, but for the most part, I think the father's going to be the main disciplinarian, if he's even allowed to be nowadays, because they even try to take that away from you now, right? Like for us growing up, we had like stepfather figures, but not a real like father figure, you know, just transient ones. And I just, like the only reason, like I had to learn a lot of things through like male coaches and male teachers and other men just checking me basically when I was out of line or out of pocket, you know, and that's the only time I would reflect about, okay, maybe I shouldn't act like this, or maybe I shouldn't do this and that. You get me?
Yeah. It's a deep discussion that can go so many ways and so long in one key aspect, like absent fathers, not having role models, not developing the proper skills. You can go on for hours on each topic. So I would say, just for this video, for example, I think it's important that every man needs to know about finances. So can you go into detail about that? Because if we go into the absent father, we could go 10 hours on that.
Yeah.
Then not seeing how relationships should work between a married couple, 10 hours on that. So right now it's just, let's just say if whatever points we make, somebody could just write it down and be like, all right, I need to work on my finances. And then another one I say is learning self-defense, how to protect yourself and your family and what's yours. Expanding your knowledge, I would say, what would be another thing that you would say? So I would say learn how to fight, learn how to handle your finances. What else?
Your dynamics with women around you, your dynamics with other men around you, emotional regulation, discipline. Those are major topics.
Okay, let's go back to finances. How key is it, in your opinion, right, in your experience, for a man to know how to handle his finances?
So this is a topic I'm interested in. I believe that it's not just for men that need to know how to do this, it's just people in general. And once again, this is one of these topics that you could go on forever, because we have like a problem in society where we're like instant gratification. And then like if you see everything on TV, everything is about being flashy and things like that. It's rare to find people that are actually living within their means, that are actually not. When you hear living within your means, a lot of people automatically put a negative connotation to it, like if you're poor or something. But it doesn't matter. If you're making $1 million a month, and that's a lot of money, right? If you're spending $1.5 million, you're living above your means, right? I think even the basics nowadays people don't do, which is, for example, living within your means. And then it goes to like kind of a bigger issue, the fact that our money system is actually debt, so that's a whole, as you know, that's a whole nother,
Yeah.
You're opening a whole can of worms right there. So we have our money being debt, we have that consumer society, and these are just like simple principles. Like the majority of people think that people in the past are dumb. I get that impression for people. But the thing is, people in the past would have common sense of like saving, investing, and living within your means,
Yeah.
But nowadays, like for instance, the quote unquote smart people, we're talking people that have $50,000 to $500,000 in student loan debt,
Yeah.
That's common. Like, it's not crazy. Like, there's a lot of people that feel proud they have these degrees, not putting people down for going to school or nothing like that, but you're already starting off in a hole. If you're basically, that's basically a house,
Yeah.
That 500,000 now, that houses have gone up, but like 500,000 as a house, so there's this, I just feel that's a huge problem, I think, right now in society, that the finances.
The mindset.
Yes, and just that common sense, common knowledge, the traditional things that have worked for centuries, that's like, it's far few in between now,
Would you say people they lack the common sense of how to handle their money, and they are not logical in their decision making, they're emotional in their decision making, and a lot of that is due to the giving into the influence of society nowadays, like the perception of, I just bought this new car from the dealership, and
yeah, that's another huge topic though. This is, once again, these are my opinions, but I think that's one of the most ignored subjects this also comes back kind of to like the father in the household and the traditional family unit, because people nowadays always complain, like I was even about to say, why don't they teach you finances in school, right? But yes, the school's supposed to teach you things, but you can't outsource your children's life to other people.
you can't depend on them
Exactly.
to teach them what they're supposed to know.
Exactly. So that's the family unit that needs to ingrain these simple, common knowledge. Back in the day, common knowledge, principles. Nowadays, they're rare. So some of these people, you can't blame them, because you got to be taught how to do everything in life. You got to be taught how to walk. You get taught how to eat. Everything is like a learning process. But if nobody really brings that concept to you of managing your money, and it's so funny because we dedicate like a third or more of our life to working, but you don't know what to do with that fruit of your labor. It's just like everybody kind of just estimates how much money they have, and like, okay, I got enough for so on and so forth. Everybody just has a really short time preference with their money, and they're not thinking long term. But this kind of a bigger issue, because a lot of people are seeing what happens in like the financial world, and a lot of people from our generation kind of lose hope, because you have inflation that's soaring. We've seen the financial crisis of 2008. We saw the financial crisis of the COVID pandemic, right? So people they don't see no value in saving and investing, because everything just seems to go evaporated. And that's due to our money being in that fiat debt system. So that's kind of out of our controls. But now we have more options. You have cryptocurrency, or you could buy real estate, hard assets, or you could buy some gold or some silver, for example, right? But that's when you get a little deeper into the game of learning about finances.
So if you had to say, just briefly, the negative effects of not managing your money, and then the positive effects
of not managing your money?
First negative.
Of not managing?
The
positive effects of not managing your money?
Positive of managing it correctly. And then the negative, first the negative of, okay, you know what, you're just careless with your money. And then the positive, so people can see, all right, if I stick to this, then this is what I have to look forward to. And what have we seen when people aren't managing their money correctly? Like, what's the outcome in that? Like, what is you could say the future hold for you?
Yeah. So once again, these are like, it's like these to me are just common, conversations, and these are just common topics that should be widely accepted. For example, but I want to say, the United States is a great place to succeed, but a lot of people get offended at that, or a lot of people feel like, they hate the U.S. But that's kind of, I can't.
I would say all that is people want to take accountability in
Yeah.
anything they do. They want to say it's the government's fault I'm not succeeding, or it's because I was raised a certain way. It's because I'm a certain skin color. That's why I'm not succeeding right now. Instead of taking self accountability, we see it across the board. Every single race, every single story. That it doesn't really matter your race or where you were born. Is are you willing to work for it? Yeah, some people start ahead financially, and some people start ahead emotionally. Right? Everybody's at different levels in every aspect of their life. So it's accountability to me.
Yeah.
But continuing on what you were saying about the effects, like what do you see? Well, somebody's like, you know what, I'm gonna do car payments. I'm not gonna manage my money. What's their life gonna look like in the long run?
Yeah. So what I was gonna say is we're starting with the negatives. You said.
Yeah.
Well, the negatives, like that's why I was saying earlier, like sometimes you can't blame people because of what they're seeing. Everybody kind of has a loss of hope. People don't really have hope. A lot of people don't have hope, and they feel like they're not gonna live very long. Maybe, especially like if you grow up in the dangerous parts of the country. Like we grew up I remember when we used to live in dangerous parts. I didn't think I was gonna live very long, so I wasn't really thinking long term. I thought I was gonna get shot or something because we lived in some pretty bad neighborhoods, and then you're just if you're a young man and you're Hispanic, you're gonna have beef with people. It's just normal.
Yeah.
For us, it's normal to just have beef, right?
Yeah.
So I thought I was gonna get taken out a few times, right? And I almost did a few times, right? But so when you live like that, you don't have that long term. Everybody's like in survival mode. So this kind of goes back to psychology. If you're just in survival mode, you're not thinking long term, right? So the number one thing is, if people are in that survival mode, you can't really expect them to start saving and things like that. You get what I'm saying? Because everybody's just trying to fucking just grab what they can and just survive.
Like the animals eat right now.
Just from meal, exactly. Just meal to meal, right? But you can think ahead, and like when we were talking about this country, right? I know people have all kinds of different opinions, and even now I'm kind of saddened seeing the direction of the country going, but it still remains a fact that I believe if you work hard, you can make it out, and I believe we're a testament to that. We have immigrant parents, we came from literally nothing, no house, not even apartments. We've been in the streets, like literally on the streets, sleeping on the streets, and just consistent working and working. It's not easy, and it doesn't come fast, but you slowly start gaining momentum if you put in that effort, and if you have that vision of knowing what you want to do and what you're telling your money what to do. This is like from Dave Ramsey. You tell your money what to do, right? Instead of your money dictating your life, you dictate where your money is going. Exactly. Everything has to be on purpose. Like this goes to that the line in The Godfather, right? That women and children can be careless, and men can't be. You can't be. Everything has to be a really thought out decision, and especially with money, you got to know it. Wherever. Obviously, I'm not talking about worrying about nickels and pennies, but you get my point, right? You got to be very directed with your money.
Know what you're doing with it.
Exactly. You have to know what you're doing with it, what you're paying, where you're gonna invest, how much you need to save. All of those are mandatory in my opinion. Like if you're gonna be working and if you're not doing this, you're basically in a hamster wheel, right? You're
working almost for no reason.
You're working for no reason. Yeah, you're like in survival mode.
Just to pay the minimum and then you can enjoy it. So let's move on to fighting.
Okay.
That's a fun subject, right?
Yeah.
Well, for us, because I believe for the majority of men, it's something natural in us to be attracted to combat. not necessarily in a negative aspect where you want to commit violence to innocent people, but it's just instilled in us because, as history shows, the men are the ones who go to war. The men are the one who protected the family in the villages and countries and cities. I think learning how to fight is one, obviously important to protect yourself. Also, knowing that you can fight affects the way you carry yourself as a man. And also, I think it's essential, which I was thinking about, you need to be willing to fight. Because if you're interacting with another guy, you guys can go verbal back and forth. But if he's willing to fight and you're not, then at that point it's going to be like you're going to have to almost submit, you know?
Yeah.
So what else do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's in, like you said, it's in our instinct, because what most of us, like I grew up watching, I don't know, Batman Saving the City. I was fascinated the first time I saw boxing. I was completely in love with the sport. That's before MMA was really prevalent. So that was my idea of perfect combat, was boxing, right? And what do we watch superhero movies? Right. A lot of us play video games, and what are you doing in those video games? In one way or another, you're fighting, right? You're like exploring and fighting, right? And that's another thing that everybody's kind of disconnected. Like you and me grew up and we would have fist fights in the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Like it was just part of growing up, right? But nowadays I feel like it's less and less common, which some people might say is a good thing, which I don't advocate for people going out and fighting in the street, but I definitely think it's integral to being not only a man, but just a human being on this planet. You don't want to be left to what other people can do to you.
Yeah.
You know, everybody thinks that they have a certain level of skill, but if you've trained, you will automatically realize that you have no chance at all against somebody that's trained, or even somebody that's bigger than you, or even sometimes when you're. Even another major factor is if somebody's just willing to go that extra mile to hurt you, even if they're not skilled. If they're just hell bent on hurting you, so a lot of times that takes over. Sometimes that can even supersede skill. So it's like that's a good thing about training, though. It's not just about being a badass and being able to fuck people up, but it's about having that mindset of not being a victim and feeling confident and being able to handle situations. In intense situations, there's nothing more intense. There's a lot of intense things, right? But it's super intense when you're cornered, you're in the corner, and somebody's just lighting you up with strikes. Or if you roll jiu-jitsu, how frustrating is it to just get choked? No matter what you do, you end up getting choked. It's like there's literally, like, if I know we're kind of getting out there, but if you go into like a post-apocalyptic situation and you're one-on-one against a person, if somebody that's trained there, just take you out like in 10 seconds. Against an untrained person, right? Yeah. We have less than 10 years training, right? Less. We have probably like 5 years training maybe, right?
I'd say like if you had to put my training into like hours, I'd say like into days. I mean over time.
Over time, yeah.
Like 5 years.
Yeah, we have about 5 years training, right?
But like on and off.
On and off. But how fast do you, I mean, it's not like a bragging thing or nothing like that.
Yeah, so I was going to bring that up. But
it's not bragging, right? But against an untrained person, it's like less than 1 minute.
It's like
one-on-one with no weapons.
Not to brag, obviously. There's
with no weapons and one-on-one and against an unskilled.
Somebody who hasn't really trained is.
It's just like, it's not even a fight.
It's like a superpower, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not even a fight, right? And not saying we're the toughest, badass fighters or nothing like that. It's just if you've trained if you trained over like a year, consistent training, then you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. If you haven't trained that long, then you're not gonna get it, right?
It's like they're basically babies. It's crazy.
You could just impose your will on somebody that's not trained.
Because imagine somebody who's basically spent. Let's say you did a year of training, you did it, I don't know, you say total hours, you did that whole year, let's say 200 hours. So you spent 200 hours trying to figure out how to keep somebody down and choke them out while you also defending yourself from high level people or people at the same skill still. Basically, you've seen this for 200 hours and that person that you're fighting has seen it for 60 seconds or they did a little bit of wrestling when they were kids, but not by an instructor, just themselves. So by the time they even process what's going on, you're already doing 4 or 5 steps ahead of them. So also I say, so we're talking about jiu-jitsu. I say it's essential for every guy to know how to grapple, because you can defend yourself without having to hurt the other person or even hurt yourself. Because if you ever punch somebody in the head with your bare hand, you can break your hand, right?
Yeah.
But I also think learning how to strike is essential too, because you learn how to dodge strikes and learn how to manage distance. And again, it's also a confidence thing too. But it's essential to learn how to fight for your confidence. And if you're confident, then that's going to help you obviously in the aspect of women, right? Because they see you carry yourself confident, even if there's a bigger guy than you, they see you're confident. They're like, oh, this guy's confident. So it helps you in that. And if you being confident in other aspects is going to also help you be confident and say, walking up to your boss, hey, I deserve a raise, or hey, I'm going to apply for this position. It's a ripple effect in every aspect, you know?
Yeah, and sometimes it's like you don't need to even vocalize. Sometimes your body language just changes. Like, you could tell when somebody's like confident in knowing what they're doing, with just how they walk. You know, I feel like a lot of fighters develop that they just walk around. You know, you do have those anomalies that you can't. They're like super like timid, and then they're freaking killers. You know, but I would say that's more of an anomaly. I would say. You know. And then there's gonna be a lot of guys out there that just say, "Oh, I'll get a gun and shoot somebody," right? And I highly encourage, and I'm a proponent of firearms training. But I don't. It's just a certain level of confidence that, because there's certain places you can't take your guns. You know, there's certain clubs you can't. You're in the clubs, you're not gonna be able to take your gun. In the airport, concerts, and these are where a lot of people are. You know, that's where stuff goes down.
Yeah.
But when you have the training, you're a weapon. You are the weapon. You know,
and also not everything justifies using your gun.
Absolutely.
Defending yourself. So
it's something that, this is not to sound cocky, but sometimes I feel more safe without a gun, because I don't have to worry about, you know, the legal ramifications of shooting somebody. Like, I could either defend myself or de-escalate the situation with my training, or you could run away. With a gun, you kind of have. It's kind of bulky, you know. It's kind of bulky, and it's like you feel like you're not going to be able to strike so well, because it might fall exactly, and it might be used against you or something like that. You know what I'm saying? It makes it harder to run too, you know. So sometimes I don't like walking around without the gun, but at the same time, sometimes it feels like a lot of extra burden.
Responsibility.
In a way. Yeah, responsibility too. Absolutely.
But also, like you said, you're advocate for carrying firearms. That's also a thing you should learn as a man, how to handle firearms, right? You can be God forbid anybody's ever in the situation, you can be the best jiu-jitsu black belt, golden glove boxer, taekwondo master. If there's, I'd say 2 to 3 guys, depends how much they know, you're not gonna choke somebody out if there's 2 to 3 guys coming at you, right?
Well,
it just depends the situation, right?
Yeah.
If let's just say you got 3 guys, they surround you, start rushing you, or if you know 3 guys are coming at you, you might need a firearm at that point. It's just, obviously, everything is circumstance based. I'm not saying that's your automatic go-to, right? Let's just say it's 5 guys, right? You have an option. Let's just say it's 5 guys. God forbid they're trying to go into your house. At that point, you have no option to run. At that point, it's who's in the house, what my family members, and I need to handle these 5 guys. Let's say you only have women in the house. Yeah, you should teach your woman what to do in that situation, but also how effective are they going to be in that, right? Like I said, it's instinctual in most men, right? Some have it more developed than others. So you need to learn how to use a gun.
Yeah.
Right. So you should have various types of guns. I'd say, you know, you have your handgun to carry around with you. If you have 5 guys and you have a shotgun with 7 rounds in it, you hit each guy once, you're pretty much set, right? So you need to learn how to use those weapons too, and it's to make you feel safe and your family feel safe. And also, that's not only the physical part. You need to be developing your how do you say this? Your skills mentally, and how to see things that are abnormal, how to make preventative measures so you won't seem like an easy target, like learning how to stage your house, learn how to see people who are acting suspicious, out of the ordinary, be aware of your surroundings, you know, things like that, and also teach your family to do that, because they don't necessarily have to fight with you, but if you teach them how to recognize abnormal, suspicious people or dangerous situations, then they can alert you so you can have time. You have more eyes, basically, in my opinion. But that's essential. Learn how to protect yourself in physically and preventatively, and strategize and preventing by being aware of your surroundings, I think.
Yeah. It's like a shout out to the active self protection.
Yeah, those are great videos, and those videos, since I've watched so many of them, which I've already naturally, thank God, been like that, but it's like that's made even more paranoid in a good way. Of keep like in the videos they iterate like, oh, watch the hands, watch the eyes, and then like how people react to certain firearm encounters. But it's sometimes those videos come to my mind when I'm like doing my work, right? So my work, so you guys know, security right now. So interacting with people, those stuff comes to your mind. It may not be the exact video, but it's the principles in it. You know, watch the hands, keep your distance. If they're moving quickly to grab something, why are they doing that? If they're not complying, you know. So there's resources out there you can search to better your understanding and how to protect yourself, you know.
Yeah, I think a major component, like they say in active self-protection, is situational awareness.
Yeah.
That's the major thing. And it's funny because I know there's even gonna be dudes that are like think that we're tripping what we're talking about, but that's because they've never been in situations like that, you know. And if you notice, like obviously you can't blame the victims, but a lot of times if you realize it, it's rare when a victim was just kind of completely minding his business and something fucked up happens. Like a lot of the times, there's just a lack of situational awareness. You know, if you notice, like even the most basic things and a lot of these attacks, a lot of people have the opportunity to run away. Simple and basic, but they're like in shock, or they're waiting for somebody to come help, or it's just a lack of situational awareness.
Yeah, some people may have never thought about what they're gonna do.
Yeah, because it's frightening. You're just minding your own business. Some people just come up and start fucking with you, basically.
Yeah.
They have just evil intentions, and just complying doesn't mean they're gonna let you go. Like I saw some messed up ones where the people are complying and they still take them out for no reason. These people are just operating on different frequencies. They have no care about other human beings at all.
I think also a big thing is your ego.
Yeah.
Your ego. So it's really tough, especially as a man, to like let your ego go. But you got to think about what does it matter, right? Because these people decide to mess with you, you're gonna let your ego get in the way and put you in an unsafe situation. Even if you know how to fight, if you can avoid a fight, avoid it. If it doesn't matter, if you can avoid it, because especially if you're with other people, like your family and stuff, just avoid the situation if you can. Obviously, you know, there's those situations where you can't avoid it, then you do what you have to do. But if you can avoid it, just walk away, no matter how big, strong, or skilled you are. And again, when it comes to situational awareness, I'll give an example. Me and my girlfriend and my sister were at a casino, right? And there was these group of guys coming from a long distance, which I saw them, right? That's parts of being aware, yeah. So I saw them, and I'm like, and there's nobody else around, because that's like towards the back end of the parking lot. I'm like, you know what? And they were like, you know, young guys, right?
They're rowdy or no?
They were kind of rowdy. It was a group of young guys. So I told the girls, hey, let's go this way. Right? I didn't tell them what was going on, but if it's usually, you've seen videos, right? Where it's like a group of young guys, or even inexperienced yourself, a group of young guys, they're trying to mess with people, especially on the strip. If you went out with your one guy with two girls, that's another recipe for you I had my gun with me, but you can avoid the situation, you know? Yeah, I could pull out, blah, 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 but why have all that when you could just one step, thank God. You know, God alerted me, like, hey, look ahead. Just go that way. We went around to where like the club was lined up and avoided the whole situation. That's situational awareness, and your ego too. Instead of saying, "Oh no, I'll take care of them. Doesn't matter. You know, I got my gun. I know how to fight, but avoid the situation." You know.
Yeah.
That's parts of protecting your family.
Yeah, that's definitely a tough one right there. Balancing the ego, but at the same time not being a pushover. You know,
Yeah.
that's a huge one right there. Because in certain situations, most of the time is to avoid a fight, but it depends on what the situation is, right? Because if you're like in close quarters with people, and if people know you, if you avoid stuff, that's when people see you as a victim.
Yeah, if you're like at work and your coworkers like trying to talk mess to you, like you got to set them straight.
Yeah, because
You know?
people will prey on you if
Yeah.
if they think you're scared. You might not be scared, right? You might just be trying to avoid conflict, you know, because just like when you train heavy, like you do not want to fight nobody, right? You're trying to chill. You already got all that out. You're like
Yeah.
you're not trying to hear any mess. You're just trying to relax, right? Be chill. But some people are just aggressive in outside of, you know, in other places where they're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know, and you're just you don't feel like reciprocating the energy.
People just want to test you, and there's just people that want to, I don't know, they just, like you said, they have the idea they have this certain skills, and they just, for some reason, think they can just test people because they've never been stepped up to. And again, once you step up to them, they might reconsider what they're doing. And also, don't be just stepping up to people because you might catch the wrong guy and he might be a savage, you know?
Yeah.
So, also another thing is, like you said, people think they have certain skills. A lot of people think, which as soon as you start training, you find out, they can last a long time in a fight.
Oh man, you're gassed out in 15 seconds in a straight struggle.
Yeah.
If you don't, even if you're trained, you know it's exhausting. Just to go like a 60-minute, like a 3-minute wrestling round is
Yeah.
exhausting.
So somebody who's never felt that before, of full strength for 30 to 60 seconds, that guy who trained and has felt that before, if you're tired, you can't move. And then
Yeah.
not on top of it, so you're done. You don't know how to defend yourself, and he's not tired, and he has all the skills. You know.
Yeah,
So just a little bit of training can go a long way.
Yeah,
So
makes a huge difference.
confidence. So also a key thing for every man is working out, right? Workout. Again, it'll affect your confidence. It'll affect how you're viewed by other people. And what other benefits? Stress relief.
Yeah, because when you see somebody that's in shape, obviously we have a lot of we have some genetic outliers that are just buff for no reason, right? They got genetics. But for the most part, when you see somebody that's in good shape, there's no denying the hard work and effort that it takes to get there. Because it's not easy. You gotta work out multiple times a week. You gotta be somewhat consistent. You gotta have a somewhat strict diet to get this much improvements, you know? I mean, you get your baby gains like the first 6 months to 2 years, like you get a lot of gains, but after that, it's so difficult because you got to be so consistent. And if you stop working out, the gains disappear right away. So you know that person is disciplined and committed to something, right?
Yeah.
He's like a walking testament. He or she is a walking testament of the kind of person they are. They obviously can commit and be disciplined enough to achieve that, so they could carry that same skill to other ventures in life.
Yeah.
You know.
And what's another key thing that men should have?
Just because of the father figure living in the house, I think a lot of men don't know how to interact properly with women, and vice versa. A lot of women don't know how to interact with men, because if you're a young woman that grows up with her father, you don't know how to interact with a male figure, right? And the young man, same thing. He doesn't see his father interacting with his mother and other women around him, so he doesn't know how to interact with women or even with other men, because you don't see how the male interacts with other men. You get me? So that's a huge thing right there. And I think so. It's like a compounding effect when we talk about how when things compound, the effects are exponential. So that's one of those compounding. You get the father out, then the kids grow up messed up, and then as you can see, society slowly starts devolving, right?
Yeah.
It's just like a broken pattern, and it just gets worse and worse because people have less family ties, less social ties, less community ties. And when all those things are broken, you see other people as strangers. You don't see them as part of your human family, you know, because everybody's so distant from each other.
Yeah.
So that's where the lack of compassion who comes in, and then just the lack of care for other people or for things around your house, because there's that bond is all gone. And that bond starts, a strong community starts with a strong family.
Yeah. We do a video on that. Also, the family unit and the effects of a broken family unit.
Yeah.
What about like principles? So we go back to that. We didn't really talk too much about principles.
Yeah, so when I talk about principles, one of the most common ones is just you got to be dependable, right? Because if you're not dependable, then people do not take you serious. And then to get even more philosophical is you don't even take yourself serious, right? Like one thing I like to do is if I say I'm gonna do something, and even though I don't want to do it later, I follow through, and that makes me a little more careful with what I say I'm gonna do. You know how when a lot of people will say, "Oh yeah, we could hang on next week," and everybody's like, "Yeah," right? Everybody says yeah, but they don't really attach themselves to it, right?
Yeah.
So what I started changing was if somebody would say that if I wasn't sure I was gonna do it, I would make it clear, okay, we'll talk about it later, or I'm not gonna go, or if it just slips out, then I'll have to follow through with it. So that makes me more careful with what I'm talking, right? So that's what I mean by principles. So like I said, one of the major ones is to be dependable to other people and to yourself. And that comes to also with when we're talking about money and finances and looking into the future. In order for you to have confidence in yourself, you got to be dependable to others and to yourself, right? Because if you know yourself and if you set yourself a goal, you know you're going to follow through with it because you have that commitment to keeping your word.
That does affect your psychology.
Yeah.
Like doing what you say you're gonna do, and then it compounds, right?
It compounds.
Then it just becomes a habit. So principles. So I'm gonna express this right because I'm Christian. I believe every man, right, should have a relationship with Christ because only through Christ there's eternal life. And as a man, you should lead your family to what's good. And not only take care of the present, but also eternity. And God guides us in aspect of how to be a man, how to treat your fellow man, and how to handle yourself. There's a lot of wisdom, and there's the truth in the Bible, God's word, and there's wisdom in God's word. And a lot of things that the Bible says that I've applied in my life have either prevented or helped me accomplish things. And like sayings like in Proverbs, right? Like in Proverbs, it's a soft answer kindles fire, right? So that you apply the things that God teaches you in His Word in your life, and you'll see yourself succeeding, right? God obviously puts us through tests to develop our character, and I know that God lets us go through things for another purpose, right? Like for instance, right now, me and Sammy, we didn't grow up with a stable father figure, right? For me, I have my brother, right? So he was my father figure. But because we didn't have a father figure and we were forced to learn the things of men, and even now we're learning, it's been more rapid now because we feel the effects of it. But because of that, now we're coming out, and I see guys younger than me, and whatever advice I get from my brother or learn, I tell the younger guys. And it's to help the situation that's happening right now, right, in society. There's an attack on the dad, obviously, first is the family unit. There's an attack on men because the foundation of the family unit is the father, right? The father is the umbrella over the family, and then it goes down. Like in the Bible, it's been like that since the beginning of time, right? In Genesis, God's order was Adam, then Eve, right? God gave Adam the order, and then Adam was supposed to give it to Eve, and that's what men are supposed to do, right? They're a princess. The man is supposed to be the priest, the prophet, and the king. The priest is the one who advocates for the family. He said the man talks to God for the family. The prophet talks to his. So the prophet is the one who speaks what God says to the people. So the father speaks to his family as the prophet, and then the king, meaning having rule over your family. So going back to the attack on the father, God's order is the man is the leadership role, and don't take it as the man is superior. It's just a role, right? How God designed it. So instead of the devil going to talk to Adam, what did he do? He went to the woman. He didn't obey the order of God things. He didn't obey the order that God intended, and he was slick and went to the woman, and that's where things didn't go right. So that's what's going on now. They're trying to go around the men. They're destroying the men, because once the men are weakened, they go to the women, and then this is what you have. And women, how do I say this? I'm just going to say it. It's not to offend, but men are more drawn to order, and women are more drawn to feeling, right? So when you're drawn to feelings fluctuate, so there's less order. So if you take away the order, then this is what happens. You have people not knowing if they're male or female. You have people not knowing what to do in life. You have people not knowing what the truth is. When the men rise up and bring order, that's when there's a foundation, there's less chaos, and a lot of anxiety and stress comes from not knowing, right? So if you don't know, if there's no order or foundation to follow, then you're lost, right? So there's Jordan Peterson, he has 12 rules for life. It's a self-help book, is it, right?
Yeah.
To give you guidance, to give you something to grasp, to a foundation for you to go off of. Because if you have nothing, then you're just kind of lost in what you're going to do. Unless you know exactly, hey, I'm going to do this, then you're kind of lost,
Yeah, I think that's a dangerous slippery slope we're going down, where people are now even questioning things that are like objectively observable.
Yeah.
Like certain things you can't even say anymore, even though they're like biological facts and all that. So to be politically correct, you can't speak the truth. And if you can't speak the truth for these coming generations, they're gonna have no foundation of no grasping about no basic. Imagine that. That's what I mean. You can see why people are lost, because there's no foundation anymore. And even the foundation, the little logical, observable things that we can see now, even those are being questioned nowadays.
It's like what they like to do now is mass things, and it's like, okay, so people look at North Korea like, oh, it's horrible over there. They can't say whatever they want, right?
When they look at what?
North Korea and like dictatorship states, right? But the agenda now and what they're pushing out and how they're doing it subtly, right? Which I think all this is derived from the devil, right? Because he's subtle, right? Nothing's gonna be blatant, because then you'll recognize it, right? He's not gonna come in like a monster. That's why I say he disguised himself as an angel of light. So it's virtue signaling, right? So anyway, so what they're doing now is, instead of saying abortion, they're saying terminating a pregnancy, right? And also, they're making you think they're not attacking your freedom of speech, because in Korea you can't say certain things. Here is you have to say certain things, right?
Compelled speech.
Yeah, so that's an attack on your freedom of speech. And it's, like you said, it's like you're in it, you're looking at, haha, it's funny, but sometimes you step back like, this is horrible what's going on. There's people saying you have to call this guy a female, no matter what he looks like. And that's against your rights. That's against how you believe in Christ. That's against your belief, right? And there's other religions that also male and female, right? This against whatever they believe in, right? So it's just ridiculous. So the funny thing is, you've seen that video of Andrew Tate where he's like, oh, for the next 5 hours, I'm identified as a female. And they're like, okay, what are your pronouns? King and Lord. The funny thing is, before I ever saw that video, that was basically my argument I would tell people. I'm like, oh, the people have to do that? All right, I identify as king. As king. You have to identify me as king, right?
Yeah.
And people look at you like, oh, that's ridiculous. But they don't, like, it's all this PC influence and brainwashing,
Yeah.
And it's all through videos and YouTube and social media.
Yeah, so there's a lot of issues in these topics, because obviously you and me grew up in that Christian frame, and that we have that lens where we view the world that way, right? But there's a lot of people that don't have that same lens, right? So they automatically dismiss of a lot of what we just said, because they're not coming from that perspective, right? And also with a lot of these people that are like the political correct type people, a lot of them is just about feelings versus, you're not gonna make any friends, or you're not gonna get them to see any side talking
just complete like badgering them with logic, right? Like I love like Ben Shapiro. He speaks a lot of facts. All he speaks is facts, and he's obviously very intelligent, right? But he's not gonna. It's rare for him to win over somebody because he's just like badgering people with logic and stats, right? But you can't really reach people that way. You know, some people is kind of difficult because you feel like they're too far gone. You know, where you can't bring up any topics before they get triggered. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely a huge, and it's also like not only are you breaking apart the family unit, once you get to certain of these topics, you're breaking apart like the foundation of society because you can't even have like dialogue anymore. You know, because like there's a lot of people that, for instance, if they find out that you associate with, if you associate with a certain president, they won't talk to you no more. You know, just because you believe in a certain president, they automatically dismiss you. If they see that you're Christian, they'll automatically dismiss you. If you have a certain opinion on the Second Amendment, they'll dismiss you. If you have a certain opinion on abortion, you automatically, like everything you have to say is null and void after that point.
People can't just have disagreeing point of views and talk about it.
And then
civilly.
It's also frustrating because sometimes you try to have just a dialogue with somebody, but if you're from that perspective that they feel very strongly about, the logic just goes out and it goes straight emotional reaction mode, you know. And there's no solution to that at that point. Like you're not gonna get, like there's a lot of times that I've encountered that, but I'm not gonna jump to their level and get emotional with them. You know, at that point you just disengage. But it's kind of frustrating because you don't want to stay quiet because you know they're wrong, but at the same time you're not gonna go to their mode.
That's something I've had to learn. You're like, you're not gonna get anywhere.
Yeah.
Like another pointing back, not having foundational principles leads to this. You're just swayed to whatever the society's telling you now, whether it's right or wrong. Because if you have no principles to stand on, you're left to whatever they want you to do, you know?
Yep.
So like the 70s, everybody's like, yeah, let's be hippies. So then who never had no foundation, they're all hippies. Now, let's all be tolerant now. So what's going on now? You have no foundational principle, tolerant. Everything, tolerant. Which leads to, if you're not checking out what they're leading you to do, obviously at first with the LGBTQ community, they're like, oh, it's just two adults, love is love, right? Then after that is, all right, transgender. Then eventually, so that led to transgender basically saying, if you're a man, you just feel like you're a woman, it's okay. And what's happening next?
The children?
The MAP, right? That's what I just saw. It's minor attracted people. So all they have to say eventually is, God forbid it doesn't happen, but eventually it's going to happen. I feel like I'm 12 years old, so I'm going to be with this 12-year-old. Like, so with no foundational principles, if you have no principles, they're like, it's okay. They're okay to be LGBTQ, but as long as they're not pedophiles. But now it's because you allowed this slight change into, you accepted a male saying he's a female, and now those people who have no foundation are going to accept he identifies as a minor. So that's why it's important to have foundations. And if you have foundations, you're going to pass that on to your kids. And again, like Samuel said, the primary responsibility of teaching your family is you, because the educational system is going to go based on what the government says, and the government is there to appease the masses or control the masses. That's a different topic. But anything you want to say in closing?
No, we could. If there's anybody out there that enjoys this kind of stuff, go ahead and let us know what you guys want to listen to talk about. You guys could talk with us. We're open to any opinions. Go ahead and drop them. Instead of just worrying about canceling people or stuff like that, just have a dialogue. It's not, that's what moves society and civilization forward, is dialogue between people. That's what I believe.
That's how you come to an understanding.
Yeah.
Who is it? I don't know if Jordan Peterson says this, or I don't know who says it. Assume the person you're talking to knows something you don't.
Yeah.
So you might
learn something.
Yeah, you might learn something. All right.
Yep.